Well, I was born in 1930, and we lived in Horseheads, New York at that time. That was during the Depression. Is that 30, the Depression?
Yeah.
And we didn't have gas one day, I remember, so I was going to fill up the car with snow so he could drive it. I got in trouble there. But it was time, we didn't have much. We had each other, though. When my father was really wanted me to become a lawyer, and I didn't want to become a lawyer. He used to cross himself and say, "Oh my God." He said, "Son, this is tough." This is tough. I said, "I want to be on the show." And what interesting people that we have on the Carnival business.
Jim Strates was born into the Carnival business, and since he took over the family-owned and operated Strates shows more than half a century ago, he's been at the helm of a railroad carnival that is now the last of its kind. From its winter quarters in Orlando, Florida, the Strates train annually takes to the rails, bringing its cargo of rides and attractions to fair and festival goers along its route in Eastern America. This is Jim Strates' story, told in his own colorful way, a coffee cup and a cigar always at hand.
My name is E. James Strates. The fellow you just interviewed is James E. Strates. That was my father's name. And that's an old Greek tradition. And I'm E. James, and my son is my father's name, and then his son is my name, you know, to go through. And of course, my father was a Greek immigrant, and our first name is Strates. We go by E. James, so all my children except one is named Strates John, Strates J, Strates James Strates, but all, even my daughters. We got to the fifth child, my wife says, "Enough's enough." I said, "Enough?" She says, "Yes." So John is not Strates, he's John Edwards. But yeah, the name Strates, and it goes back a long time. In the 20s, used to be when my father. You want to hear about my father?
Yes, I do.
My father was an immigrant, came over, went to work in Lowell, Mass, in a shoe factory. Interesting stories. He got.
What year did he come over, and about how old was he?
You know, he was very young, and I don't know what the year was, but it was
early 20s.
Maybe
or late.
Very early 20s.
Okay.
And he was met in New York, and they'd saved some money to send him over here from Greece. He had 7 brothers. 6 of them were killed fighting the Turks, and the parents didn't want another one to go. Mm-hmm. So they packed him up, and everybody came in, and you know, the thing to do was go to America. Very, very popular.
Was Strates the Greek name?
No, Strateos.
Okay.
The name actually is Strateos Demetrius. Demetrius is James Strateos. So.
Spell that, will you?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Strateos is EFSTRATEOS.
Okay.
You know, and
okay.
Dimitri. But anyway, he changed it. He changed it to American name, and loved this country. But he worked in a shoe factory. Then he went to Endicott, New York, and he worked in a shoe factory there. And he joined the YMCA and began working out, wrestling. And he became a wrestler. Then somebody said what they ought to do is get together and go out and have a wrestling show, which was very popular in the late 20s and the early 30s. Mm-hmm. So he was a wrestler, and he was with a fellow by the name of Nick Bazinas, who was another Greek fellow, and a man by the name of Bill Platt from Bath, New York. And they would go into town, they would set up a top, put up a ring, and they would take all comers. And if you could beat the wrestler within a certain time, you got $5, which was a lot of money in those days. And they did that for a while, and then very successfully, they got involved in a couple of kiddie rides, and they named the show the Southern Tier Show.
That would have been about what year?
That would have been probably someplace between 1927, 1930.
Okay.
And Southern Tier Show, and then the story goes like this. They were going to go out and have a big season. So they had a giraffe, and they were going to buy a lion. And this was a big deal, and they really had to scratch in order to get the money. So they got a lion, and they got a giraffe, and they're really going to have a show this year. Well, the giraffe got too close to the lion, and the lion killed him. Well, that did it. Nick was a great wrestler. He was really good in his field. He said, I'm going to go back to wrestling. I've had enough of this. And Bill Platt, who was a very successful farmer, says, I'm going back to farming. So who does it leave on the road but my father? So he took the Southern Tier Show, named it the James E. Strates Shows, and went on down the road.
Out of what town?
He was in working in Bath, New York, and Corning and Elmira. Elmira actually, I don't know how he ended up in Elmira because he worked at Endicott, but when they started to travel, and he had some Greek friends in Elmira, and he knew them. But it was between Corning and Elmira and Bath in that area, and they didn't go, too much further than that. And then they started traveling, and finally bought some railroad cars. And
what prompted that decision?
I don't know, but I know they had trouble the first time they moved, and everything still went over the road, and they sent the train empty. So whatever they were working out.
Mm-hmm.
They got into the railroad business, and then it began to grow.
And that would have been about what year?
Well, I was born in 1930, and we lived in Horseheads, New York at that time. And that was during the Depression. Is that 30, the Depression?
Yeah.
That's when my uncles, two of them were at the county home because we couldn't afford to have them. People, they were being supported by living there, and they used to walk down the hill where our house was and have dinner on Sunday,
Yeah.
And we didn't have gas one day, I remember, so I was going to fill up the car with snow so he could drive it. I got in trouble there. But it was time. We didn't have much. We had each other, though. The whole temple changed from yesterday till today, and the same thing with the show people. And as things progressed, and then we came along. I was born in 1930, and I remember as a young man running around the show, and I just loved it. It was, but it was so far from what it is today.
What kind of ride did they have then, and how were they powered? Did you have any steam-powered rides still on the show?
No.
Okay.
No, we had, most of it was electric. Well, most of them were not electric. Most of them had motors that would run, like the Tilt-A-Whirl would have its own gasoline or diesel, and I think they had to be gasoline engines that would run and turn the wheel. And
belts that use belts?
Yep. It was and of course that's completely different from what it was. We got the top spin ride, which is computer run, and anything comes up on it, it shuts down itself, and all of that. But it was a great generation. It was a generation of people that came with the show and were here for their lifetime. There was no I quit. Coming out of the Depression, the people didn't have anything. They were lucky to have a job, and they got established, and they worked together, and it was a family orientation. There wasn't much difference between people as far as who was the boss and who was the worker. You know.
Everybody that was on the show worked for the show, right?
Yes, everybody on the show worked for the show, and people were here for a lifetime, literally, for a lifetime, and it was really great.
What were your earliest memories of traveling with the show?
Well, I think the most impressive thing is when we wintered in Savannah, Georgia, and which was down in the black area, and I had a lot of black friends that we played with, and again, my father knew a lot of Greek people in Savannah, but Savannah was a nice city, and it was different, and we enjoyed our winter time, and we had relatives. We had Uncle Louie who lived on the train. Everybody lived on the train then, and he would come in for breakfast, you know, and it was really a family affair. People that weren't even related to you were part of your family, you know. People were there because they wanted to be there. People were there. It wasn't a money thing either. Money never ever surfaced where someone wanted a raise or what. I never remember anything like that.
How many cars did you start off with? Did your dad start off with? You remember?
No, I don't. No, I don't. We worked into 50 cars over a period of time as the show got bigger and bigger. And
to you, what year did you start taking over the operation of the show, Jim? What years did you start? I mean, of course, your dad probably started schooling you pretty early, didn't he?
I worked in the show, and when I was younger, I worked in the bingo one season. I worked on the train crew one season. I worked in the office one season. I worked laying the lot out, you know, and then I would go back to school. So actually the time is when I came back from the Marine Corps, and Daddy died the 11th of October in 1959. So 59, and I was already there for 3 years. So I would say 1956, 1955.
And you would have been how old then? Well, let's say 50. You would have been 26 years old then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
how old were you? Well, let me ask you it this way: did you live in a town to go to school and then travel on the train during the season, or what was that all about?
Well, I ended up at Syracuse University.
Okay.
At the same time that I was at Syracuse, we were wintered in DeLand, and we finally moved to Orlando, and he bought some property there.
Yeah, that
So
would have been in the, what, 40s? 50s?
no, later than that,
50s?
because I got out of the Marine Corps in the mid 50s, 55, something like that, and my papers were to Orlando. So that's when I came back, and I spent 3 years, and I came back out of the Marine Corps because I thoroughly enjoyed the service. And
What did you do in the Marine Corps?
I was an intelligence officer in the 1st Battalion, 1st Division, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines.
Okay.
And
Did you see any time in Korea?
no,
That was after the
no. The day that we were supposed to leave Camp Pendleton, they reached an accord at Panmunjom, and because they used to take us and put them on a train out of Camp Pendleton and take you to Treasure Island in San Francisco and fly you over. You were in the line the next day, and the day before.
Yeah.
So we ended up retraining the division when it came back.
Okay.
But no, never got there, and I probably was lucky, you know.
Where did you go to Syracuse before the Marines or after?
Before the Marines.
And what did you get? You get a degree in there?
Political science.
Me too.
Did you?
Yeah.
I don't know what that did for me, but
I don't either, but it's good.
Yeah.
Reading about constitutional law and all that good stuff.
Well, you really get involved in politics and international affairs. Your attention is It was easy because I was interested in it, you know. I mean, I don't get up a morning that I'm not on Google News and seeing what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And but
So you went to Syracuse, and but did you travel with the show during the summers?
oh yeah, every summer.
How old were you when you first started traveling on the train? Do you recall?
When I first started traveling on the train,
Yeah.
probably way before high school. They sent me to military academy. I think when I was 9. I was at Florida Military School when they bombed Pearl Harbor, and I never forget it either. Our whole senior class was gone like in a month or so.
Where was that located?
In St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg.
Yeah. And of course we had, even at that time, we had subs sinking our ships, and we had bombers. Every morning we used to count the bombers going out on sub duty. Never forget it. It was steady, and everybody wanted to go. Everybody wanted to go to the war.
You were 9 at the time.
Huh?
And you were how old at the time? Oh, you were about 11 or...
I was 11 years old, which was a little bit young, and then I ended up at Peekskill Military Academy.
You did? Oh, a lot of them did, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
which was just up the Hudson here.
Sure.
And of course I got a little old. Let's say I was 9, 10, 11, 12. I was 12 years old there. I ran away with 2 other guys to go and join the Royal Canadian Air Force.
You did?
Yeah. But I was slightly young. I guess 12 or 13 wasn't old enough. But anyway, we thought you could get in up there because they needed pilots. And we wanted to go train for that, and they found us.
So what'd you do? They send you home?
You know, they put me back in school. You know, so...
Regular school or military academy?
You know, because I was at the Peekskill, and they got a lot of people. Everybody was hot to go. You know, everybody wanted to join the service. So then I ended up actually getting out of Peekskill, and then we bought the farm in Corning, New York, and I ended up at Northside High School, which I graduated from there. Went to Syracuse and graduated from Syracuse.
What year did you graduate from Syracuse?
I think that was in
In the 50s?
early
50s?
early 50s.
Yeah, okay.
And then joined the Marine Corps and was in the Marine Corps and was back. It'd been 4 years. I was 3 years before Daddy died, and 4 years in. It was 3 years in the service and 4 years. So that, late 40s. Late 40s.
How old was your dad when he died?
He was a month away of being 65.
65. Was it a heart attack?
A stroke.
Stroke, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that put the burden of the business, did it put it pretty squarely on your shoulders at that point?
Well, it did. It did, but I had 3 years. And again, the people were different. We went to winter quarters, and we ran winter quarters
Still on the land?
and fed our people and paid them nothing. And they were willing to do it. I mean, it wasn't even a question. They were there. They were going to do it. They were for the show. It was their home. It was as much their show as it was ours. And everybody went down and did what they had to do. And that would show people. And I don't know where else you'd find people that would do that. And when we got back and after Daddy died, first thing we did was start sprucing things up. Mm-hmm. And he went through a tremendous challenge earlier in his lifetime when the whole show was at Mullen, South Carolina, and it burned down. And they replaced the whole show in like 3 months.
That would have been what years?
I don't remember the years.
After the war, during the war?
It was after the war, yeah. Yeah, just tremendous.
Okay.
And some of it's documented, some of it is not.
Mm-hmm.
But the life in the show business was was not bad. It was great in raising children, and he wanted his children to be educated, and they all were. And
You say you're one of 7?
no, he was one of 7. I was one of 3. I have 2 sisters, and I have a half sister. But then in '59 we took over and ran the show the best we could run. And probably the Marine Corps was education was more beneficial than even college.
How so?
Discipline, punctuality, responsibility, doing what you're responsible to do.
Simplify.
Asking people to do things and following up and seeing that it was done. Treating your people with respect, but at the same time demanding a certain level of behavior. Probably the Marine Corps, if anyone wanted a good basic foundation that's solid for management, the Marine Corps would be the place to go, because they're so well organized and their approach is definite direction without I mean, it's a clean business approach with nothing else involved with personality or the color of your skin or anything else, other than if you have a task and you have a person and he's in that category to be a superintendent, then that superintendent should do his job.
In the 3 years that you traveled with the show before your dad died, you really got a crash education. I mean, of course, you'd learned a lot over the years, but what were the most important lessons that your dad left with you?
Well, you know, when you come out of the service, you're a little bit hyper. And he used to, he was a very religious man, and he would just shake his head sometimes and he'd cross himself, oh my God, because I was gung-ho.
Greek Orthodox?
Yes, yeah, Greek Orthodox, and he would say, easy, son, easy, easy, you know, but I was all over the place and thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, if I had it to do again, that would be, the show business is something that if you're in it long enough to be comfortable with it, the fact that you have to get up off your duff in this business, and as you get older, if you can't get off your duff, you ought to get away from it. But it really does something for you psychologically and physically, that you have to get up and do a job and get up in the morning and you're dealing with people. It's a people business, and the fun of knowing every time you go to a different city and you know so many people in the city and friends that you become really attached to. It was just a wonderful walk through life in what we did and the people we work with, you know, something that I just could never imagine myself going into. And my father was really wanted me to become a lawyer, and I didn't want to become a lawyer.
Did he push you into trying to go into political science as a study?
No, he put me in. He wanted me to graduate and go to law school. Absolutely, he thought lawyers were the greatest. And I didn't want to be. I said, I want to be in the show. And he used to cross himself and say, oh my God. He said, son, this is tough. This is tough. I said, I want to be on the show. And what interesting people that we have on the Carnival business. Steve Fanning with the Elephants. He was a personality. Nate Eagle with the Midgets. Kelly with the Sideshow. Jack Norman with Burlesque, Broadway to Hollywood. Scotty with the Black Show. I mean, that black man that was with us was part of our family, you know. In this business, when they talk about integration, we had integration we didn't even know what it was not to have integration. You know,
Yeah.
it was such a different, and yet we're running along, and we knew the radicals, and you'd get to the South, and there were people that showed their superiority over the black all the time, and had to voice their opinion. You know.
Tell me about the society changes that you've seen on the show in terms of the kinds of people that have been on your show since you took over at 59.
The biggest change is in the last 10 years.
What did you have before, and then what do you have now?
What we had before was class personalities. They were in the business. Our concessionaires, Mrs. Delabates ran she read your palm, and her husband worked a concession stand. Really classy people, classy people. We had Nate Eagle with the midgets, classy people that had worked in Hollywood, you know. We had Jack Norman, who ran the girl show. He was the head of the USO during World War II. We had Wayne Kingsley out of Indiana, was a diesel expert, ran all of our electric. We had Eddie Keck in the office, and Nick Bazinas finally came back to the show when wrestling went out of the fad, you know. We had just great Alan Travers, who was an agent for people. We had Roy B. Jones, who finally went to Coca-Cola and got a job. So many great personalities that were with the show at the time. In the girl show, my gosh, Broadway to Hollywood, what a beautiful, and striptease in those days was really, really great. It was music, and now you can go to the beach and see as much as you could see in the girl show. And the black, you know, they were song and dance and teams and whatnot, and jokes, and they were tremendous, tremendous. But there was never an integration problem of any type until the integration thing became very popular in the United States, and then it began to creep in to the show business a little bit, you know, and never interfered with our business except the rules that people were writing down of what you should have. It was like burlesque. Burlesque was great, and then they started topless bars and so on and so forth, and then they kind of, and then girls that used to be on the girl show, now clubs began to open up. Vegas opened up, and that source of people dwindled. You know, the midgets got older and retired, and no one ever put a team together again like that.
Well, did you ever have? Did you have fairs in the old days where they insisted on you having strong girl shows?
No. It was a place to go. If you had police on your lot and you had a problem, the best place to find them was in the girl show. They'd always be down watching the show. And we used to complain about it, but that's where they would be, down at the girl show. And it was great for the love life of the people that were on the show. It was wonderful. Nice looking girls, and we've got some. I've got a lot of pictures. God.
When did you start lopping off? Did you ever have animal acts on the show? Well, Steve Fanning, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we had a whole menagerie: elephants, zebras, hippopotamus. In Butler, Pennsylvania, it was terrible warm.
Steve must have come off the Christianity show to yours?
Probably.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We got one guy off the Ringland show, and we were in Philadelphia, South Philly once, and the elephant trainer, they turned on the elephant trainer, and they got loose and they started stampeding, and they were in the parking lot, and the guy that used to put him in the truck for him, his name is Wingy. He was one-armed Wingy, and he took his hook and he ran back and he got him, started yelling at him, and hitting him behind the ear with a hook, and he got him under control, and he marched him like a soldier to the train and put him in a boxcar. But if it hadn't been for him, we made him the new Elephant Man. And he had no inhibition about going right to him, you know. And they backed down like a Georgia mule. It's really something. But the story after story after story, Sam Sakalaris, who used to be with the show about the time that I came aboard, and in fact, he came to the show after Daddy died, and he was my front end man. And we started trading. He's in Danville, Virginia. We played Danville again, and we go to dinner and we sit down and start talking about all the things that happened on the show. And I said, you know, we ought to write it down sometime because it's so interesting. But the personalities, they were just really great people.
When did you start shutting down the grill show, the reviews and the side? Did you have side shows too?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
The truth of it wasn't like we were shutting them down. It was when the people that were running them died.
Okay.
After Jack Norman, we ran a grill show a little while longer. We had another fella named Joe Boston, and we had 2 grill shows. And they used to fight with each other, turn their sound up, and when they would bally, you know, and great personalities. Joe would go over and then Jack would punch him in the nose. He'd go back where you belong. And it's just great. And the side shows. And then we had fun houses. Fun houses weren't that popular at the time. We had snake shows, very, very popular. And then we had the fat lady. In fact, we had one fat lady die in Syracuse, and I forget where the other one died. But after 2 died on the show, no fat lady would come on the show after that. That was it. You couldn't double their pay to be there. That was all there was to that.
Jinxed, huh?
There was a jinx. So, but it was a life that is unrecorded probably. Maybe in pictures we've got some really good pictures.
Did you have a legal adjuster, or did you call him that on the Carnival? A fixer?
No, we had a manager, and Sam was a manager, and he actually looked after the concessionaires, and if there was any complaint come to the office, he would handle it.
This would have been Sam who?
Sakalaris,
Okay.
out of Danville, Virginia. Still living, retired. Just a splendid, again, real classy guy.
Yeah.
Just a wonderful guy.
You had generally good relationships with the police departments during all those years.
Everywhere.
You were a big outfit.
Well, we became big.
Yeah. Tell me then about the transition from the time you took over. What happened in the years that you were running the show? I mean, that's a big subject. But
Well, the thing that significantly happened was the old team began to die off, and there were no replacing the Brett Kellys and the Suttons that ran the sideshow. Haw had a sideshow, and I think he's the only one left right now. And when he dies, there'll be no sideshow because people didn't know how to run a sideshow, didn't know how to build a banner for the sideshow, didn't know how to sell a sideshow on the valley. You know, whether the fire eaters or the pincushion man or whatever. As the peoples and the personalities and what was yesterday, the people, there's no one that you could say, well, I want to go into the sideshow business today. You know? So when Ward Hall dies, I would imagine that would be the end of the sideshow. Yeah, Ward Hall is really the old timer. He's really got a sideshow.
he does.
Not just a freak show. He's got a sideshow.
A good subject.
And the big change was that those people passed away. The loyalty went with them. Lifestyle, which people thoroughly enjoyed being out here, which I do myself. You got a different element. You got an element that the country expanded. People could get other jobs and didn't have to travel. The younger generation, when the families came along, the wives didn't. We had so many people that really enjoyed the business, and their wives just didn't like traveling, didn't like living in a trailer. Generation before them, it was great. They had a nice trailer, they traveled well, they had nice pickup trucks and cars. Of course, in those days, trailers were hauled by cars and not by pickups like they are today, you know, because they've gotten bigger and heavier and whatnot. But the big change was the people dying, and then the working help that we had on the show were different. We ran into the drug problem came along, and that really took its toll. In fact, I would think that the drug problem erased our entire train crew before it was all over.
It's what?
Involved in drugs. They would get involved in drugs, and then some got off the road and didn't want to, couldn't travel because they'd go to rehabilitation. But we lost almost all of our train crew as we knew it. So, and as help got harder to get, then we worked into the Mexican help. And the Mexican help is a real issue right now, the H-2B, which they finally okayed this year, but they may not next year. They're legal immigrants, and big process we got to go through, and a lot of money. And the government suggests that we not have any more legal ones, but we make all the illegal ones legal, which I don't understand the government at all. All of your nurseries in North and South Carolina are all Mexican now. Why? Because American young people don't want to go out and work in a nursery for a living.
Now, what kind of nurseries? Are you talking about the trees and plants?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
People,
child nursery, but
yeah, they're not going to come and do your yards.
Yeah.
Go to Florida, look at the people look at the people in the construction companies.
Yeah.
Manual labor, they're really not interested in. We've done a great job in educating people, and they want something, in their opinion, better than that. The manual labor. Now, we can tell even this year, with a slowdown all over the country, we hired, when they were hedging on this H-2B, not knowing if we're going to, we hired 90 people. Well, what did we get with it? Well, we got some very good people, but we also got the drug people all over again, and alcohol. And we did have some alcohol problems prior to that time, but it all came back again. We don't have an alcohol problem. We don't have a drug problem with Mexicans. In fact, I don't know one Mexican we ever tested for drugs that was under the influence.
That's a good point you're making. Do you test for alcohol? Are you required to test for alcohol on the show?
It's not hard to test for alcohol. You can tell someone under the influence, but it is with drugs, and we're very, very conscientious. Everybody will be tested for drugs on the show, and if they have marijuana, we'll give them time to get off it, and we'll test them. Some we were testing. We had a ride superintendent, the head ride superintendent, and we just let him go before we left winter quarters. He's on cocaine, and he went back on it. He was great last year. He wasn't on it, but in fact, George is the one that heads up the drug testing, and among other things, and we just simply not going to tolerate it. You can't afford it. If you have an accident on a ride and someone is under the influence, that can be the end of you.
What's been your in the almost 50 years now that you've had a hand tilling this rudder of this big show? What's been your ride safety record?
You mean our experience in safety? Yeah. We had a fatality in we had a fatality in Raleigh once, It was closing night, and they had extra help, and the guy was up on a Zyklon, and the boom was coming around, and he was just a beautiful night, good-looking, big, strong black boy. And the crane picked up a piece of track and had taken it over, and he was on the next piece, and he had his back to it, and the crane came around, and the ball was swinging, and it just touched him, and he fell down and killed him.
How long ago was that?
Oh, that's got to be 15 years ago.
50 years ago?
15.
Oh, 15, yeah.
Yeah, and then we had a fatality in Miami at the Broward County Fair. They had the Spider ride. An arm broke on it, which had been tested and inspected. In that time, in the last 2 spots, it had been inspected 2 times, and they had. It's interesting. They had information that there were cracks in them, and they would have looked for them, and maybe they did. We don't know, but the arm broke, and a girl was killed. Very unfortunate. And
this would have been how 10 years ago?
10 years ago, maybe. But just, but those are the only 2. And we, way back when my dad was living, we had a man electrocuted. He was taking a tower down.
Unemployed.
And he was doing something he hadn't ought to be doing. And he was standing on a metal top of the wagon, and yeah. And then we had an independent, a concessionaire that was with us. He died in Syracuse, raining, had water up to your knees. And the guy says, "Turn off the lights." Instead of going to the junction box and turning the switch off, he went and grabbed the wires from the diesel and pulled them down.
Yeah.
And down it went, and he died. But
so you're pretty proud of your safety record.
Yeah, we've got a good safety record, but it's not something that just comes to you. You know, it's a continuous thing, and they've improved also the information, the flow of information. In the old days, if a ride had an accident, then the show would cover it up as much as they could. And the ride manufacturer would cover it up 100%, because they did not want anyone to think that the particular ride that they put out had any exposure to an accident. Since then, what they've done, all accidents go into a center computer system, and it's notified every show that owns one. And it's like they do with the airplane. When we flew our airplane, they had whatever type of airplane you were flying. If anything came up that happened to another plane anywhere in the country, you would get a notice on it to have your plane checked. Well, they do the same thing now with rides, you know. And
what's the good news and what's the bad news of ride inspections everywhere you go?
Well, the bad news is you get a variation of inspectors. Some inspectors inspect with the idea of making sure that everything is safe. Other inspectors inspect, and they're more prone to show you their authority rather than do a job of actually inspecting. I mean, there's no reason to have an inspection and be hostile. And then when you cross over and get into New York State, you'll get people that are really to the meat of it. Of course, New York is one of the states that first started inspections and were really thorough, and they send their people to so many seminars on what comes up and what's new and what they should be looking for, and get really qualified people. You know. The good thing is, if we can have our Mexican help, we're back up to a standard that we were at any of the time that we were really good, because they do their work and they do it well, and they're a dedicated group, sometimes difficult to deal with. We have a fuel problem right now, and the problem is the cost of it, and we're regulating the diesel on the train, turning it off when we've got space in between, and of course they don't like that very well, and they all, whenever they want to speak, they all come up here at one time, and you run into a little bit of that, which is no big problem, because there's so many people in Mexico that would like to work, that are all good workers. It's not hard to get them. Now, we've had ours with us now like 8 years, and we've got probably 6 or 7 that are ride foremen, and making what they make in Mexico in 3 months they can make in a week here, and they all send their money home, and they're basically really good operators, you know.
What were some of the other major changes that you made? What was the size of the train when you took over, and how big did it grow?
About the same.
About the same.
50 cars.
Yeah.
But we got 20 trucks on the road too. See, 2 things happen. One, that the trailers that you put on the train, they've widened the wheels on them. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult with some of the new rides that came out with the new trailers with wider wheels to put on the train. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the new rides that we're running are going over the road. Okay. Such as the Ring of Fire. Uh-huh. I don't know, there's 20 of them.
Yeah, okay.
And the doubles, the generators. You put a generator, and it can't go on the train, we have to send it over the road, which is not all bad.
Right.
Because we make some moves now where we split the show, and we send some in a truck unit to one place and put the rest on the train. Mm-hmm. But we need, if we got all 90-foot flat cars, they're actually 89, we call them 90-footers. They're wider and will handle that. But that's a logistical thing we'll get involved with.
What were the older lengths of the cars compared to today, and what's your mix today, you know?
Well, we bought new flat cars, which are 80-footers. We used to have 72-foot cars. Mm-hmm. We still, the loading flat is a Warren tank car. It's the only one left from the old school. And in fact, the railroad right here, the Housatonic Railroad, has got some coaches we're thinking about buying. I'd like to buy one and go in and see what we can do and how to fix the inside of it. And they're really up to date. We need to replace probably 5 cars is what we've got on the train. And it's very comfortable for them. You know, they've got a place to live, they got places to have showers, go back and have air conditioning for sleeping. It's a whole different ball game, and it's very important for the train to be up to par, because if you help us happy in the living conditions, then you got a better worker, you know.
Do you have your own train crew?
Yes.
And how many people do you have?
12, 14 people.
That are totally dedicated to the train?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'd say dedicated to the train. During the time we're in operation, they're the ones that come out and clean the lot up. Okay. They sweep the lot up, empty the trash bins, you know.
Do they do repairs on rail cars on the road?
Not as much. We
you used to do a lot of it, didn't you?
We do it in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big.
What has been the major changes that you've seen in rides and attractions and the mix of all your attractions from the time you took over to today?
Well, rides now are mostly controlled with computers and safety devices that we didn't have before. The inspections have become more vigorous, and which is a real asset for us. And in the states that have well-trained inspectors, been very helpful for us. The rides are no longer run by individual motors. They're all hooked up to a plant. The diesel generators are a major investment, and so we service them, and probably of all the shows, we're probably more up to date on our diesels, which burn less fuel. Now the newer ones that are coming out are burning more fuel, simply because the government put a restriction on pollution.
For additional insight to the setup, daily operations, and teardown of this unique carnival, see my companion video, Strates Shows Moving America's Last Carnival on Rails, or visit the Strates Show's website for current information and additional history. For now, I'm Lane Talburt. See you down the road.